Hello everyone, I'm North Hempstead Town Supervisor Judy Bosworth, and I, along with our town board, are proud to present At Home with North Hempstead, a series of special programs for children, seniors, as well as entertainment for residents of all ages. I hope you enjoyed this special presentation and check back often for new content. This week, join us as we take a virtual field trip around North Hempstead and explore some of the hidden gems our town has to offer.
So I started with Port Water Taxi here 5 years ago, and I'm considered seasonal, as they'd say. I've been here pretty long time. I've known Matt Myron personally for a while, and that's how I started on here on the Port Water Taxi. And I love it. It's a summer job to me. I'm here in the beginning of the season, and I'm here at the end of the season. I'm the first one here, last one to leave, and I love it. There's a lot of great spots here in Manhasset Bay that people don't usually know about. They just see body of water, boats. This is, they call it the Gold Coast, where the rich and famous were. And our first stop here would be Louis, right off of Town Dock. The town, Louis, is a staple in Port Washington. They've been here for over 100 years. Now, the great thing about Louis, or the funny thing about Louis, is when it first started, it was a barge. And it was a little plank on the water, and people would walk on over. Now, during the Prohibition era, Louis would sell booze. They would have the booze brought in by boat, and they'd sell the booze underground. So everyone liked Louis. That was the hangout spot. So whenever there was a police raid gonna happen that would take all the booze out and ruin the party, you'd have people run down and say, the police are coming, the police are coming. And Louis would put the barge up, and they'd drag the barge out in the middle of Manhasset Bay with everyone still partying and boozing around and drinking. And the police would come down to raid Louis, and there'd be no Louis there because they'd be sitting at Manhasset Bay. The police would go home, and then they bring Louis back, put the gangway down, and then everyone would just keep partying throughout the night. And that's how Louis was able to get away with, well, not really get away, but enjoy the time of the year. Yeah, not well known, but that's what happened here. Moving on, you got in Manhasset Bay, we have 3 different yacht clubs. Knickerbocker Yacht Club, which is now Knickerbocker Yacht Hotel. They were the oldest yacht club on the North Shore of Long Island. Before they went out of business in the financial crisis of 2008, then they were bought over and turned into condos and a 6-room yacht hotel. And then right next door, you have Manhasset Bay Yacht Club. This is more of our sailors go here. This is more the station boat crew that goes here. They, right now, during the pandemic, they've had to shut the doors for a little bit, but with phase 2 coming in and phase 3 coming in, they're now going to be opening up their doors again. I have personally not been there, but I have dropped people off there, and they do have a fun time, I'll tell you that. One of the things that yacht clubs do that they've kept over the years is at sunset, when they raise and lower the flags, they fire off a cannon. And every so often, I'll be driving by with a tour, or I'll have people on the boat, and I'm not noticing the cannon, and it goes off right off the water, and I jump every time. It's still 5 years later. So with the water taxi, we have many stops we can go to. We primarily do dock to people's boats that are here on the moorings. We take people out for little tours as a side gig, and we take people from the restaurants here. You got Louis Restaurant, which has its own dock. You have LaMotta's, which is based out of Manhasset Bay Marina. They have the restaurant, which has been running for years, only during the summertime though. We have a lot of people there. And then Capri Marina has their famous restaurant called Butler's Flat, which is a clam shack type restaurant, and people love it. The lobster rolls are very delicious. Now, this house right here, white Southern style plantation house, seems very out of place here, being on the North Shore of Long Island, up north. This house is actually very special, this part of Long Island, because it was the home of Carl Fisher. Carl Fisher, as those who might know have been down to Florida, you got Fisher's Island down there. He was heavily into automobiles in the early days, in the early 1900s, and he developed all of the roadways for Miami. And he developed Orlando, and then he was up in Indiana and developed and started the Indiana 500, which is still going on today, which is a big race up there. Now, at the end, it was 1926, 25, when the governor of New York asked Carl Fisher to come up here, and he wanted a roadway built connecting the Hamptons out east to New York City. He wanted all of Long Island done the way that Miami was done before. Carl Fisher was invited up. Carl Fisher built that house, which is still here today in 1927, laid out the road work for all of Long Island. But 1929 came around, the stock market crashed, and the plans eventually fell through, and nothing really came of it. He ended up selling his house, this house here, and moving back down to Florida, where his bigger mansion was. And then that house has been filmed in many movies, many TV sets, because there's just nothing like that up here. We have our last yacht club, Port Washington Yacht Club. Port Washington Yacht Club has turned more into like a family-style yacht club. They offer a lot of family-style events and a lot of kid programs, and that's what they're heavily into. Being with that, they have a great sailing camp that they do. Manhasset Bay has one also. Port Yacht Club has one as well. And right in the middle of this cove here that they have a big inflatable type pyramid, almost like the Egyptians in Egypt. And then they have a little inflatable raft next to it. And what the kids will do is they'll hop in the water, they'll climb up the pyramid to the very top, and then one will sit on one end of the big blown up raft, and then they'll jump off and then blow the other one into the water. And that's their favorite time. I always love coming down here and seeing them how far they can launch each other out into the water, because it's the best thing. As of right now, they're not doing it, but I hope they will soon. There's Long Island Boat Rentals, run by Christian Gordon. He also does kayaks. Every Thursday, it's called Thirsty Thursdays, and it is a sailing race for the people of Manhasset Bay. Every Thursday at 7:30, they go out to the middle of Manhasset Bay where there is a start and finish. Buzzer goes off, they race on out to Long Island Sound. I'm not exactly sure where they go, but they're out there for a while. They don't usually get back until around 9:30-ish, but people love those. There's always 20 or 30 sailboats getting ready to race each other out there. There's not, it's a fun time. Coming up now, we're coming up into Port Washington, end of port, beginning of Plandome here. You have more of the $1 million mansions, as I like to call them. And there's a special house many of you might have seen as you're coming into Plandome from port down Plandome Road. It was a big red house right on the corner before you made a left turn. That used to be the John Gotti house. John Gotti was part of the Gambino crime family based here in Queens, Long Island, Manhattan area. And I had someone on board when I was doing my tours before, and I pointed out the John Gotti house, an elderly man, that he remembers John Gotti, young John Gotti, serving him drinks at the Hempstead Country Club behind the bar. This is before everything happened, and then they got into the crime family, and they're most notable for the Lufthansa heist. I believe 1977, 1978, $5 million, gone. Never seen again. He wasn't a part of the actual heist, but he was in the family that did the actual heist there. There's ospreys have been making a comeback. You might have heard ospreys maybe 10 years ago. They're an endangered species. Here on Long Island, I've been here for 5 years. I maybe seen, when I first got here, it was maybe like 2 or 3 ospreys. Well, now on a regular basis, I see about 10. And they're making a real comeback here in Manhasset Bay. They're eating a lot of the fish. You got these little bunker fish. They're not really good to eat. They're kind of more bait fish that you use to catch striped bass, fluke fishing. They're good for that. But the ospreys are definitely making a comeback here in Manhasset Bay. Here we're coming up on one of the Osprey Nests here in Manhasset Bay. In the background, you can see the female bird sitting in the nest while the male kind of patrols because we've gotten a little bit close. They see us. By my guessing that she's also still in the nest, they have hatchlings that have probably hatched already. Funny thing about this house, this was the CEO of Grumman actually lived here for a long time. Grumman was huge back in the World War II. They had a lot of plants. They had a plant here in Manhasset Bay when we take you around to go to the Seaplane Base. And they had some other plants further east on the island. But what's fun about this osprey's nest behind me is we actually put in their dock. So we install their dock in the spring, they play with it in the summer, and then in the fall, we take their dock away. So in this spring, when we get to put their dock in, it was my boss and we put the dock in, and while he was getting the dock together, I was a lookout watching the ospreys to making sure they weren't gonna come and attack us. And he made sure to keep an eye on them. So one lookout and one guy putting the dock together. It was, you know, you gotta watch out for them because they do not care. They will protect theirs. This home here was actually the John Whitney Boathouse. John Whitney was an ambassador to England in the 50s. And in the 40s, he built this home. Excuse me, not home, it was a boathouse. He had his home a little bit inward on the island. It was built by the Purdy Boat Company, which is stationed also here in Manhasset Bay. All wood boat. It was the fastest boat in Manhasset Bay. It would take him from this location here in Manhasset Bay into Manhattan, where he worked at the UN building. And it would get him there in half an hour, which in the 1950s was incredibly fast back then. When he retired, his estate, he lived there, and then he sold his boathouse, which was then renovated into a house in the 80s, and is now its own separate home. Beautiful house. So things to do while here in Manhasset Bay. To my left, you can see there is, looks like a sailor in training. He is using one of the littler training boats down here at Plandome Field and Marine. That's actually one of the boats that I actually learned to sail on. And then I moved to a larger boat and had another sailor with me. And this is a great day for it. It's nice and sunny, a little bit of wind, not too much. And that right there is a boat to learn to sail on. Yeah, if he keeps it up, he'll own his own sailboat one day. Being here on the Gold Coast of Long Island, yachts come in and out of Manhasset Bay, Oyster Bay, Hempstead Harbor. They're in and out. This right here to my left was called This right here is a yacht called Take It Easy, and he's headed out for the weekend. He could be going to the city, or he could be going to the Hamptons and back, but it's a 70-foot yacht. It's got his own captain, own chef, a crew. The owner just has to sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Beautiful boat. One of the weirder things in Manhasset Bay has to be some of the houses that are popping up here now. Most of them are normal style houses that we see, but this house here on the Great Neck side of Manhasset Bay always pops the question of what kind of style is that? And I could never answer them. Finally, I had one of the neighbors on the boat who told me that back in the 90s, it was a Swedish architect that came in and designed that house. And the guy lived in it. And he built all of the supports on the outside of the house because he wanted a nice glass inside of the house so he could see all around Manhasset Bay, the sky, the stars, things like that. On the very top, he built his young daughter's bedroom. and he built her with a giant skylight that looked at the stars, and it was the best thing ever. She loved it. Well, the architect says to the owner, he goes, well, what are you gonna do about storms? And the owner says, we're fine. You don't need to worry about the storms. So the daughter's one night sitting up in her bedroom, falling asleep. This big, massive lightning storm comes through. Trees come down, winds, massive rain, and she's up there in her bedroom, and she's seeing all this, and it scares the living daylights out of her so much that she never went back up there. So now looking at the house, the owner did put a roof on the top of it now to kind of hide it, but he still has a beautiful view of Manhasset Bay, no doubt. To the left of me now, we're still in Great Neck. This is a famous house bought for $30 million 10 years ago. It's probably double that now. This home belongs to Paycar, and I'm saying it wrong, you're supposed to roll the R, but me being Irish, I can't do that. Spice for me is salt and pepper. When they moved here from a place called Persia, which is modern day Iran, and they came here and they started Paycar Rugs, which is located on Northern Boulevard. And they brought their Persian rug styles here to Long Island, and they built up that. And then they got into real estate, which how they made their fortunes here. And now they bought their house on Manhasset Bay. And Mr. Paycar, very nice man. I see him multiple times when the water taxi actually will pick him up from his house and bring him and his family out to Louis for the night. They'll go and eat, party, drink. He doesn't have to worry about anything because it's door-to-door service. We pick him up at Louis and drop him off right at his house. So I see him all the time. Great man, great family, nice house. He actually has an infinity pool up where the dolphins are. So sitting in his pool, waterfall comes over, you can sit in the pool and then you just look right out over Manhasset Bay. There's nothing blocking your view. It just looks like you can just keep swimming right into Manhasset Bay. Beautiful. Here on Manhasset Bay, back on the Great Neck side, we have a very special house here in Manhasset Bay that a lot of people do not know about. This house off the left used to be the governor of New York's summer home. He would vacation here in Manhasset Bay when the Gold Coast, the Great Gatsby times, the 1920s, 30s, 40s. And actually, FDR actually stayed at this house for a while, vacationing. And this house is actually the antique of port, considering most of these houses now have been torn down and rebuilt, newer, nicer, more expensive. But this home here is probably the oldest here on the Manhasset Bay end because just the history of it. All right, we're back here in port, and to the left of me, you have Plum Point, which is the very tip here before leading out into Long Island Sound, which is just around the other side of Plum Point. Now, back in the 20s during the Great Gatsby area, this area behind me used to be a club. It was called the Sands Point Bath and Racket Club. Bath because they had a saltwater pool, and racket because they had tennis courts along here, and along the beach all the way around they had 23 cabanas. Families could rent out, and there was a 2-year waiting list on those cabanas. The club was very successful during the Gatsby era and 50s, 40s, things like that. Late 1970s, there was a fire at the club, and the club actually burned to the ground. And the club not owning the land, it was owned by someone else, the club leased it. The owner of the land didn't want to lease it to the club anymore, and it was eventually sold privately to the house behind me here. The guy came from New York City, he built his millions there, and he came over here to retire, bought the property, built his house up, and is now a private area. He's nice, he's a nice guy, and during low tide, you can bring your kayak over, bring your small boat, and hang out on the beach a little bit, and then he doesn't mind it, but if you go onto his property, he'll come out and say something to you. Things to know in Manhasset Bay, Plum Point Cove here behind me, you see some boats anchored out here already. And during the weekend and during the hot summer months, this place will be full. Like, you can't find another spot here in Plum Point Cove. very fun hangout spot. Not a lot of traffic goes through here, and it's right off of the sound. You get a lot of nice water that comes in here. People will be grilling, partying, music, jumping into the water, drinking all day long. And these guys will come here from about 10 a.m. and they won't leave till 10 p.m. maybe. They'll be here all day long. Fun spot to be in Manhasset Bay. Working down a little bit, just off of Plum Point Cove, you have Capri Marina. It used to be called Brewer's Capri, owned by Brewer. And now, just a couple years ago, it was bought by Safe Harbor. And now it's Safe Harbor Capri, and Capri is a little bit more deeper on the side of Manhasset Bay, so this is where you get your yachts from. Usually by now there's a big yacht here called XIII, which is actually 156 feet long, and it is the biggest motorized sailing yacht in America. It was owned by JCPenney, the CEO of JCPenney. He owned it for a while. It was a summer boat. He lived on it stayed on it for a little bit during the summer months. And then there's actually two of them. During the winter times, he drives this one up to Rhode Island where he dry docks it. And then he'll fly down to his other yacht down there, the sister ship to that, down in the Bahamas, and then he'll enjoy his time down there. That yacht stays down south. This yacht stays up here, so he never has to worry about which is which. If one breaks down, he'll just bring the other one up. So he's always got one ready. But it would normally be right here behind me is where XIII would be. It's got 10 rooms, 6 bathrooms, crew quarters, full-time captain, full-time chef, full-time 5 crew members all year round. All right, we're here back in port, and right to the left of me, you see here, we're in Manhasset Isle, between Tom's Point Apartments and MICA, Manhasset Isle Civic Association. This used to be the Savoia Machete Seaplane Base. Back in the Gatsby area in the 1920s, this place was, there was nothing here. There was a couple houses, but this is mostly in the sand mining operation. This place was leveled, nothing here. Fascist dictator Benito Mussolini contacted the governor of New York because he wanted to train Italian pilots, seaplane operations here in the States, and also wanted to use this area to fly around the rich and famous and also train his pilots. So he opened up the Savoia Machete Seaplane Base here in 1929. Well, also happened in 1929 was the great stock market crash, which destroyed all his plans. It went out of business and was then bought by Pan Am. Pan Am then started running flights out of here, out to the Hamptons and up in New England and down south. And then in 1938, they had their historic transatlantic flight, which left here out of Manhasset Bay in 1938 on one of their giant clipper planes, right out of here, out of the Seaplane Base, and landed over in Europe. And that marked, back then that was huge. The Savoia, and it wasn't called the Savoia Machete anymore, went out of business. It was called Republic Airways Seaplane Base, and they ran clipper planes out here, and they did flights to Portugal, flights to France. They did flights to Great Britain. They did flights down south to Venezuela and Mexico and Brazil. They went all over the place. The only problem with that, with being on the seaplane and being on the bay, is during the winter times, the bay would freeze over and the seaplanes would become useless. You couldn't use them. So when LaGuardia and JFK airports were established, the seaplane base was not seen as economical anymore and was shut down. And it was torn down in 1980s, 1990s. Today, they're trying to restart some of the areas because it was polluted during those years. You can't really use the grounds, but they're trying to get condos in the area or possibly homes back into this area. Seaplanes do still land here though. There was a time when there was nothing here, but the seaplanes are coming back. There is a company called Blade, which runs People from New York City, the Hamptons, and vice versa, they hop on. It takes them 90 minutes to get from the Hamptons to New York City, drops them right off at Midtown Manhattan, flies back, they run short trips to Jersey. Sometimes they'll come in here in Manhasset Bay to pick up people from the Port Washington area on the flight up to the Hamptons. So anytime you see a seaplane, it's usually the company called Blade that runs here now. And finishing things off here on the tour, thank you for coming by. This is the Port Washington Water Taxi, the captain, Captain Connor. Thank you for having us, and you can stop by and see us at Town Dock any day of the week. We'll take you out on a tour just like we did today.